Welcome to Long Story Short, a series where big historical events and themes are explained in a concise way that does not sacrifice facts or analysis. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the causes, timeline, and impact of one of the defining events in Germany's interwar period, hyperinflation, an event which had economic, social and political outcomes for Germany. Hyperinflation was rooted in the debt that Germany had acquired during the First World War, both internationally and domestically, as they utilised war bonds, an investment into the war effort which Germans could buy, which was framed as a sign of patriotism. This resulted in an increased amount of currency in circulation, which acted as the basis of inflation. Hyperinflation also was caused by the Treaty of Versailles, more specifically, the clauses which made Germany pay reparations for the First World War. The amount that Germany had to pay was not settled in the original Treaty of Versailles of 1918, but much later, in May 1921 in fact. This was when the Allies presented the staggering sum of 138 billion golden marks, or £6.6 billion for Germany to pay. In addition to this, it was demanded that Germany make an initial lump sum payment of 12 billion marks, or else face military action. The Chancellor, Joseph Wirth, instead of pushing back against the Allies, adopted a policy of fulfillment, doing what was asked of Germany in the hope of showing how impossible it was. But the state of the German economy worsened over the next year, as the government not only had to pay reparations, but also had to rebuild the German economy and uphold the Weimar social care system. So by July 1922, Germany requested to suspend reparations, with prices in the country reaching a 700% increase. The Allies declined this request. Germany fell behind on payments anyway, which led to the French and Belgian troops to invade the Ruhr on the 11th of January 1923. The Ruhr was an area in the northeast of Germany which was vital to the country's industry, being naturally rich in resources such as coal and iron. So the French and Belgian authorities took over the area, seized goods, and used German workers' labour to extract the equivalent of what was owed. In response to this, the Weimar government called for workers in the Ruhr to passively resist the French and Belgian troops via striking, a move which was popular with workers and backed by trade unions. The decision was made by the government also to pay workers their wage despite the strikes. This meant that a large amount of money was printed without the economic activity to prop it up, which essentially skyrocketed inflation. Hyperinflation had arrived in Germany. Whilst hyperinflation meant that debts and loans could be paid off quickly with inflated currency, including Germany's national debt, altogether its effects were devastating. People lost their life savings overnight, and workers had to be paid multiple times a day in an attempt to give their wages spending power. Also, pensioners or those who received benefits were particularly vulnerable to hyperinflation, as prices increased rapidly in contrast to their fixed incomes. The misery of hyperinflation was not just a reality for the working class, but also the middle class who suddenly found themselves in a state of poverty. Living standards overall declined as people struggled to acquire basic necessities such as food. For example, a single loaf of bread came to cost 200 trillion marks by the autumn. Hyperinflation became so bad that by November 1923, $1 was equivalent to 1 trillion marks. With money essentially worthless, people turned to bartering. Starvation also bred disorder, and riots broke out across Germany. Some people turned to crime to support themselves, whilst political extremism seemed to offer others a solution. The Munich beer hall putsch, an attempt to seize power by the Nazis, which I discussed in my last video, also happened in the time span of hyperinflation. The Weimar government itself, during hyperinflation, faced a period of instability, cycling through various chancellors, Wirth, then Kuno. But it was under Gustav Stresemann, who became chancellor in September 1923, that policy to curb inflation began to take effect. Stresemann firstly implemented a new emergency currency called the Rentenmark. He did this alongside Finance Minister Hans Luther and Hjalmar Schacht, a banker appointed as commissioner to deal with hyperinflation. This helped to stabilise the mark. After this, Stresemann called off passive resistance in the Ruhr to once again stimulate the economy. A commission also was set up at the request of the US Secretary of State. It was headed by Charles Dawes, and its aim was to re-examine reparations, a detail which will be important for the next video in this series. All of this worked to somewhat stabilise the dire economic situation which Germany faced in this period. But the events of hyperinflation still discredited the young Weimar government. In the words of historian Martin Kitchen, the Weimar government was seen as having first stabbed the country in the back, then robbed the little man of his savings. Although underlying, this was the environment in which extremism and anti-democratic feelings could grow, which sinister figures could exploit. Hi there, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok page which I have linked below. Again, thank you so much for watching. I have been Our Historia, and until next time.